I never imagined my life would unravel so violently on an otherwise ordinary weeknight. My name is Ethan Cole, a 35-year-old software engineer living in the bustling city of Portland. I was a devoted husband to my wife Olivia, who is 32, and a loving father to our 8-year-old daughter, Lily. To anyone on the outside, we were the picture of a perfect American family. A cozy home in a quiet neighborhood, weekend soccer games with Lily, and evenings curled up on the couch watching movies as a family. But appearances can be deceiving, and the facade of our happy life was about to crack. It all began on a Thursday night that seemed just like any other. Olivia had told me earlier that week about an important work event she needed to attend. It wasn't unusual for her to have occasional after-hours meetings or team outings. She worked in marketing at a mid-sized firm and sometimes had networking dinners. She kissed me goodbye that morning, dressed in a sharp navy blouse and pencil skirt, looking every bit the successful career woman. "Don't wait up," she had said with a quick smile. "It might run late." I nodded and wished her luck, completely unsuspecting. Why would I suspect anything? In our 10 years of marriage, I had never had reason to doubt her. That evening, I picked Lily up from her after-school art class and we went home to make a simple dinner. Grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, Lily's favorite. We ate, did her homework together, and I tucked her into bed by 8:30 p.m. All the while, I felt a pang of sympathy that Olivia was stuck at a boring corporate event while we enjoyed our cozy evening. As I read Lily a bedtime story, I imagined telling Olivia later how our daughter had tried to stay up to wait for her. We both loved these sweet moments with Lily. Family was everything to us, or so I believed. By 9 p.m., with Lily asleep, I settled into the living room couch with a book. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing outside. I checked my phone. No messages from Olivia. Probably busy schmoozing with clients, I chuckled to myself, picturing her rolling her eyes at small talk. As the hours inched past, however, a gnawing worry began to form. 10 p.m. came and went. I sent a quick text. "Everything okay?" A half hour later, no response. It wasn't until nearly 10:45 p.m. that I finally saw the typing dots appear, followed by her reply. "All good. Running late, might grab a nightcap with the team. Be home soon." Relief washed over me momentarily. She was okay. I told myself I was just being overprotective. Still, something felt a little off. Olivia's message was brief and unlike her usual warm tone. I brushed aside the unease. After all, I had no concrete reason to worry. To distract myself, I turned on the TV and flipped through channels, trying not to clock watch. It was almost midnight when I heard the familiar rattle of keys at the front door. Olivia stepped in quietly, trying not to wake Lily. I looked up from the couch, smiling in spite of the late hour. "Hey you," I whispered. "Welcome home." Olivia offered a strained smile. In the soft glow of the lamp, I noticed her makeup was a bit smudged and her blouse slightly untucked. She looked flushed. "Hi," she said softly, avoiding my eyes as she slipped off her heels. "Sorry it went so late. The dinner dragged on and I shared a cab with a couple of coworkers who live nearby. We had to drop them off first." She was speaking in a gentle rush, giving me information I hadn't even asked for yet. I found that odd. Normally she would flop onto the couch and tell me funny anecdotes from the night. This time, she didn't. Instead, she moved to head straight to the bedroom. "It's okay," I replied, trying to put her at ease. I stood up and approached her, intending to give her a welcome home kiss. As I leaned in, I caught a whiff of something that set off alarm bells in the back of my mind. A musky scent that wasn't her perfume. It smelled like men's cologne, clinging faintly to her hair and clothes. Olivia turned her face so my kiss landed on her cheek instead of her lips. "I'm exhausted," she murmured. "I just want to wash up and collapse into bed." I watched her walk down the hall, heels dangling from her hand. My stomach knotted briefly with confusion. The whole exchange felt wrong. Little warning signs pricked at me. Her disheveled appearance, that unfamiliar cologne, her eagerness to avoid conversation. Still, I chastised myself for jumping to conclusions. She said she'd dropped off coworkers. Maybe one of them wore that cologne and it rubbed off in the cab. And she was tired. No crime in that after a long work night. I pushed down my doubts and decided not to press her. Instead, I followed her into the bedroom after a few minutes. She had already changed into an oversized t-shirt and was removing her earrings, her back to me. In the reflection of the vanity mirror, our eyes met. For a fleeting moment, I saw worry in her expression, a flicker of anxiety as if caught doing something she shouldn't. But it was gone as quickly as it came. "You okay?" I asked gently, coming up behind her to rub her shoulders. Her muscles were tense beneath my hands. "Yeah," she said a bit too quickly. "Just tired, like I said. The event was fine, just the usual boring speeches. I'm sorry I'm so late." I kissed the top of her head. "It's fine. Lily tried waiting up to see you, by the way. She made you a card in art class." Olivia closed her eyes and sighed. "That's sweet of her. I'll see it in the morning. I'll apologize to her at breakfast for missing tonight." She seemed genuinely sad about missing our daughter's evening routine. It made me feel a twinge of guilt for doubting her even for a second. This was my wife, the woman I'd built a life with. Maybe I was imagining things. Everyone has off days. We climbed into bed, and I held her for a while. Her back was pressed against my chest, but there was a stiffness to her posture. In the darkness, I stared at the ceiling, still unable to shake the feeling that something about her story didn't add up. Eventually, Olivia's breathing slowed and deepened. She had fallen asleep. I remained awake, listening to the crickets outside, wondering why a vague sense of dread was gnawing at my insides. Little did I know the truth would soon come crashing in, and life as I knew it would never be the same again. Truth from an unlikely source. The next few days passed in a strange haze of normalcy and tension. On the surface, nothing dramatic happened. We went about our routines, went to work, took Lily to school. Olivia acted as if everything was perfectly fine, laughing at the breakfast table and chatting about trivial things. But I noticed she was avoiding deep conversation with me. At night, she was either glued to her phone or quick to fall asleep before I even got into bed. Something between us had shifted, even if neither of us spoke of it. I felt like I was living with a stranger wearing my wife's face. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. After all, one off night shouldn't cast a shadow over a decade of trust. I tried to focus on work and being a good dad, hoping that uneasy feeling would fade. Part of me almost wanted to confront Olivia and get it out in the open, but I had nothing more than vague suspicions and a taxi ride story that didn't align. Without concrete proof, a confrontation could just hurt our relationship unnecessarily. So I held my tongue and observed, heart heavy with doubt. It was on Sunday afternoon, 3 days after the work event, that fate intervened with an answer. I was out in our front yard pulling weeds from the flower beds while Lily played with chalk on the driveway. The spring sun was warm on my neck. I remember glancing over at our neighbor Sam's house as his garage door opened. Sam Richardson lived directly across the street. He was an affable guy in his 40s who worked as a taxi driver around the city. We'd shared beers on our porches a few times and chatted about sports, and he often waved to Lily whenever he saw her playing outside. Sam strolled over now, wearing his baseball cap and a friendly smile. "Hey, Ethan, yard's looking good," he called out. Lily ran up to show Sam the butterfly she had drawn in bright pink chalk, and he admired it graciously. After a bit of small talk about the weather and Lily's artwork, Sam turned to me as if remembering something. "Oh, by the way," he said, "I meant to tell you I saw Olivia on Thursday night, gave her a ride home." My heart skipped a beat, but I forced my face to remain neutral. "Oh, did you?" I replied as casually as I could manage, though I could feel my hand clench around a clump of weeds. "She mentioned she had a work thing downtown. Small world that you were her driver." I let out a strained chuckle. Sam chuckled as well, nodding. "Yeah, I was finishing up my shift, just happened to be near Westfield Avenue. She flagged me down outside that new French bistro. Le Jardin, I think it's called. Looked like she had a few drinks, so probably safer to cab it. She was lucky I was in the area." He kept talking, describing the coincidence, but my mind was hardly processing after a certain point. Westfield Avenue? That wasn't near Olivia's office, nor near the hotel conference center, where her company usually held events. And Le Jardin. I knew of that restaurant. It was an upscale, romantic place, the kind of intimate spot one might take a date, not a venue for a corporate mixer. I swallowed hard, still keeping a friendly facade. "Huh, no kidding," I managed. She didn't really fill me in on the details, just said it ran late and she carpooled in a cab with coworkers. Sam raised an eyebrow. "Carpooled? Nah, it was just her and my taxi. No coworkers with her." He paused, perhaps noticing my expression falter for a split second. I quickly bent down, pretending to pick another weed to hide my face. My heart was hammering in my chest now. Yeah, Sam continued, scratching his chin. She got in alone and asked me to take her straight home. No other stops. In fact, she was pretty quiet the whole ride, just staring out the window. I figured she was tired. Dropped her off around, oh, midnight, I'd say. Gave me a good tip, too. He smiled, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. Midnight. Straight home from a fancy restaurant far from her office. Alone. The narrative was crystal clear now, and it felt like a punch to my gut. Olivia had lied to me. There was no group cab drop-off with co-workers. She hadn't even been in the vicinity of her supposed work event. While Lily and I were at home eating grilled cheese, my wife had been somewhere else entirely, likely with someone else, ending her night at Le Jardin, who knows where after that. I struggled to keep my voice steady. Thanks for letting me know, Sam. I'm glad you were there to make sure she got home safe, I said. I hated how calm and polite my tone was, as if discussing nothing more serious than a football game. Inside, a mix of anger and nausea churned. Of course, man, Sam said easily. He then glanced at his watch. Well, I gotta get back to some errands. Tell Olivia I said hello. Maybe I'll see you guys at the neighborhood barbecue next week? Yeah, definitely. See you, Sam, I replied, somehow managing a smile as he walked off. The minute Sam was out of sight, I let out a shaky breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I turned to look at Lily, who was still engrossed in her chalk drawing, oblivious to the emotional earthquake happening just a few feet away from her. My hands were trembling. I had to lean against the porch railing to steady myself. My mind raced through 100 scenarios, each more devastating than the last. Olivia at a romantic bistro. No colleagues, no work event. Who was she with? The obvious answer was another man. The thought made my stomach lurch. How could she do this? How could she lie so effortlessly, come home to us as if nothing was wrong, and kiss our daughter goodnight with that on her conscience? I shut my eyes tight, trying to rein in the whirlwind of emotions. Betrayal, rage, heartbreak. It was all there, surging through me in waves, but beneath it all, a cold, steely resolve began to form. I knew I couldn't confront her yet. If I exploded in anger without proof, she might deny everything, spin more lies, and I'd be left questioning myself. No, I needed to be sure. I needed evidence and a plan. I took a deep breath and looked at my daughter. Lily was looking up at me now, sensing something was wrong. Daddy, you look sick, she said, her small face scrunched in concern. I forced a smile and walked over to kneel beside her. I'm okay, sweetie, I lied gently. Just feeling a little tired. How about we go inside and get a snack? She nodded and slipped her hand into mine. As I guided her inside, my mind was already racing ahead. I needed to keep it together, at least in front of Lily. I couldn't let her know anything was amiss. Inside, as Lily munched on apple slices and peanut butter at the kitchen counter, I stood by the sink staring blankly out the window. From here, I could just see the corner of Sam's driveway across the street. I felt a bitter gratitude that our kindly neighbor had inadvertently tipped me off. Without him, how long would I have remained in the dark? How long would Olivia's deception have continued? A new thought flashed in my mind. Perhaps this wasn't the first time. Perhaps Thursday night was not a one-off mistake or lapse in judgment. What if it was part of a pattern? An affair that had been ongoing? The possibility made my blood run cold. I thought back over the past months. Had there been other late work nights? Sudden trips or outings I didn't question? A vague memory surfaced, Olivia mentioning a girls' night a few weeks ago. She rarely went out without me, and at the time, I'd encouraged her to enjoy herself. Now I wondered if that too had been a cover for something else. I clenched my fists, feeling the nails bite into my palms. No more lies, no more playing the fool. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with, and I needed to do it without tipping off Olivia that I knew anything. If she was going to deceive me and put our family at risk, I would return the favor by catching her in her own web. That evening, I found myself in a state of cold, focused determination. I made us dinner, played with Lily, and acted as normally as possible when Olivia eventually returned from a quick grocery run. She had claimed she was stocking up for the week, an errand that conveniently gave her a reason to be out of the house for an hour. I wondered if that too was a lie or truly just groceries this time. When she came home, I noticed her studying me subtly, perhaps checking if something was wrong. I mustered all my willpower to greet her with a warm smile and a kiss on the cheek, as if nothing had changed. If she could put on an act, then so could I. Inside, my heart was burning, but my mind was already moving ahead, plotting out the steps I would need to take. I had a mystery to unravel and a betrayal to avenge, and as much as it hurt, I knew I had to be methodical. This wasn't just about my broken heart. It was about protecting my daughter's future and ensuring that justice was served for the lies and disrespect dealt to me. By the time I went to bed that night, I had resolved on one thing with absolute clarity. I would not be a passive victim. Olivia thought she could make a fool of me. She thought she could violate our marriage and walk through the door with a smile, expecting life to go on as usual. She was going to learn just how gravely she had underestimated me. Calculated planning. That night, after Olivia had fallen asleep, I retreated to the small home office adjacent to our bedroom. My mind was too restless to even consider sleep. I quietly closed the door, powered on my laptop, and began formulating a plan. If I was right about what she'd done, I wouldn't confront her blindly in a fit of rage. No, I intended to be calculated and thorough, to leave her no wiggle room to lie or manipulate the narrative. My hands shook with adrenaline as I opened a blank document and started listing out everything I needed to do. In that moment, my engineering mindset kicked in. This was a problem to be solved systematically. I outlined my objectives to give myself clarity. Gather undeniable evidence of the affair. I had Sam's testimony about the taxi ride, but I needed more. Whether through her phone records, emails, or catching them in the act, I wanted irrefutable proof of her infidelity. Secure financial and legal advantage. Before tipping her off, I would discreetly document all our assets and finances and consult a top divorce attorney. I needed to protect myself and Lily, ensuring I could win custody and not lose what I'd built. Plan a public confrontation. I wanted to reveal her betrayal in a setting where she couldn't escape the truth. My goal was to have witnesses, people who mattered to her, present when I exposed her lies. This would maximize the impact and prevent any denial or gaslighting. Leverage guilt and public shame. By catching her off guard and in front of others, I'd put her on the back foot. A cornered liar is more likely to capitulate. I wanted her so shocked and remorseful, or at least embarrassed, that she wouldn't fight back in the divorce or custody battle to come. Protect Lily at all costs. Our daughter's well-being was non-negotiable. I would shield her from the ugliness as much as possible and position myself as her primary guardian moving forward. Lily deserved stability and a parent she could trust. Address the other man. If someone had helped wreck my family, I had no intention of letting him get off scot-free. I didn't yet know who he was for certain, but once I did, I would make sure to interfere with his world just as he had with mine, whether by exposing him to his own loved ones or his employer. I leaned back and stared at the list, reading it over and over. It was both heart-wrenching and oddly empowering to see my revenge laid out as clear action items. This wasn't just an emotional outburst, it was a strategy, and I was committed to seeing it through. Gathering evidence was my first priority. If Olivia was indeed cheating, she had likely left some trail behind. My heart pounded with a mix of dread and determination as I realized what I needed to do next. Inspect her phone. It felt invasive and wrong to snoop on my spouse's privacy. Under normal circumstances, I would never have even considered it. But she had broken the unspoken contract of trust between us. I felt no guilt about temporarily becoming a detective in my own home. Late as it was, I cracked open the door to our darkened bedroom. Olivia was sound asleep, her soft breathing steady. Her phone lay on the nightstand, inches from her hand. Carefully, I crept to her side of the bed, praying the floorboard under the rug wouldn't squeak. My pulse thundered in my ears. I gently lifted her iPhone and retreated back to the office, easing the door shut once more. Back at my desk, I unlocked her phone. We both knew each other's passcodes as a gesture of transparency. The irony wasn't lost on me now. The screen lit up and I steeled myself as I opened her messages. Most of the conversations looked mundane. Chats with her mom about weekend plans, a group thread with co-workers about some project. But one message thread caught my eye immediately. It was with a number not saved in her contacts. Instead of a name at the top, there was just a 10-digit phone number. Her most recent text to this number was from Friday morning, the day after her late night out. I had fun too. I'll try to arrange something soon. Miss you. My breath caught. Miss you. I scrolled up, my hands trembling. The conversation was sparse, as if they'd been careful. A few days before that, a text from her. Work event Thursday night, we'll see you after. My heart sank further with each word. The reply from the unknown number came that same day. Can't wait. I'll get us a room. Reading those messages was like being stabbed with a dagger of ice. There was no explicit mention of love or sex, but the implication was crystal clear. Olivia had planned to meet this person on Thursday under the guise of a work event, and there was mention of a room, likely a hotel room. My stomach churned with disgust and pain. I forced myself to keep reading, taking screenshots of the entire conversation thread as evidence. There were older messages, from weeks ago. 2 weeks before, from the number, last time was incredible. Need you again. Olivia's reply, soon, I promise, working on an excuse. I felt physically ill. It wasn't a one-time lapse, it was an ongoing affair. She was making excuses to meet him. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. I took photos of the screen with my own phone as backup, then emailed the screenshots to a new secret email account I created on the spot for collecting evidence. I needed multiple copies of everything, somewhere Olivia couldn't reach. Who was this bastard she was texting? The number wasn't familiar, but given the context, I had a strong suspicion. Olivia had a boss named Mark Sandoval, whom she often spoke of with respect. He was a senior marketing director at her firm, married, mid-40s, with a reputation as a charming golden boy in the company. I remembered attending a holiday party 2 years ago and meeting him briefly. Tall, confident, perhaps a little too smooth. At the time, I thought nothing of him beyond a friendly chat. Now I replayed the memory and recalled how he had been quick to refill Olivia's wine and how they'd stood a bit too close during a group conversation. Had I missed the signs even then? I needed to confirm Mark was the one behind this phone number. A quick online search for the area code showed it was local. If it was a work phone or personal cell of his, I might not find it listed publicly. However, I did recall that at the holiday party they'd passed around a contact sheet for some reason, maybe to coordinate carpools or something trivial, and Mark's cell number had been on it. On a hunch, I dug through our home office filing cabinet where miscellaneous papers often ended up. Sure enough, wedged in a folder of old office holiday cards was a crumpled printout titled Marketing Debt. Holiday Party Contact List 2 years ago. My eyes scanned down. Mark Sandoval. And there it was, a phone number matching the one in Olivia's secret texts. It felt as though the room was spinning. It was one thing to suspect. It was another to have it confirmed so concretely. Her boss. The man who had given her glowing performance reviews, who often kept her late at work, who I had never imagined would cross that line. The betrayal had layers now. She had not only broken our marriage vows, but she'd engaged in a dangerous liaison with a married coworker in a position of power over her. I steadied myself. This was the smoking gun I needed. Quietly, I returned the phone to the nightstand. Olivia never stirred. I gazed at her sleeping form in the dim light. She looked so peaceful, so normal. It was hard to reconcile that image with the reality of what I'd just uncovered. Part of me wanted to scream at her right then and there, to wake her and demand answers. But I bit down on that urge. Not yet. With evidence secured, I moved to the next item on my list, fortifying my position. The following morning, under the guise of going into the office early, I set out to meet a lawyer. I'd spent a chunk of the pre-dawn hours researching the best divorce attorneys in Portland. One name jumped out. Marilyn Cook, known for being a fierce litigator who never lost a custody case, especially when representing scorned spouses. She had a reputation for being ruthless and sharp as a tack. Perfect. By 7:30 a.m. Monday, I was sitting in Marilyn Cook's downtown office, a sleek high-rise with a view of the Willamette River. I had emailed her office the night before, briefly outlining my situation and the urgency. To my relief, she agreed to a before-hours consultation. As I waited in her polished conference room, I felt strangely calm, as if checking off an important task at work. Marilyn entered, a tall woman in a crisp navy suit, and shook my hand firmly. "Ethan, I'm sorry you're dealing with this," she began after introductions. "But you're doing the right thing coming prepared. Now tell me everything." I recounted the events, the late night, the taxi revelation, the messages I found. She listened intently, interjecting only to clarify a detail or two. When I finished, she gave a small nod, her expression sympathetic but also businesslike. Oregon is a no-fault divorce state, Marilyn explained. That means the court doesn't officially punish a spouse for adultery when dividing assets or deciding custody. However, she added, lifting a finger, unofficially, these things can still influence outcomes. Judges are human. If we present evidence of her affair, it could sway things subtly in your favor. And if she used any marital funds on this man, hotels, gifts, whatnot, we can make a case for financial misconduct, which might give you a larger share of assets. I hadn't even thought about the financial angle of the affair. She might have. I haven't checked our credit card statements yet, but I will, I replied, my mind already adding that to my to-do list. Marilyn continued. Custody-wise, the main factor is the best interest of the child. Adultery alone doesn't make someone a bad parent. However, if her affair impacted your daughter, for example, leaving the child unattended to meet him, or if we can show your wife is unstable or neglectful, it could help your case. Do you think your wife would agree to you having primary custody if confronted? I thought about that for a moment. If she's consumed by this relationship and if I catch her red-handed in front of others, she might. She's a good mother normally, but she might not want a brutal fight, especially if I have everyone's sympathy. Marilyn gave a thin smile. Public shame can be a powerful motivator for settlement. I've seen many cheaters keen to avoid an ugly court process. If you play your cards right, we might get her to concede to your terms. Full custody to you, minimal alimony, or even none if we push it. And favorable asset division. Her words were exactly what I wanted to hear. We then discussed practical steps. I should quietly gather copies of all important financial documents, bank statements, retirement accounts, property deeds, insurance policies. I should not move or hide assets. That could look bad later. But I could withdraw half of any joint accounts into a new account in my name for security, which was legally within my rights. She advised me to start a journal documenting any unusual behavior of Olivia relating to parenting, just in case. For instance, if Olivia was frequently absent or not attentive to Lily due to the affair, note it down. Importantly, Marilyn agreed that confronting Olivia in front of an audience could be beneficial. If you reveal this in front of, say, her parents or friends, that social pressure might make her cooperative afterward. Just be careful. There's always a chance it backfires emotionally. But given your goals, it's a reasonable tactic. Before I left, Marilyn handed me her card. When you're ready, we can file. But it might be wise to have the papers prepared in advance. Once you confront her, emotions will run high. Sometimes it's advantageous to hand her the papers right then and there. I nodded, appreciating her strategic mindset. We made arrangements for her to draft the initial divorce filing and custody request with the evidence I provided. I also gave her copies of the incriminating texts and a written account of what I'd learned, to have on record. Walking out of that law office into the crisp morning air, I felt more empowered than I had since this nightmare began. I had a seasoned ally on my side and a concrete plan taking shape. Over the next several days, I followed Marilyn's advice to the letter. Each evening, once Olivia was asleep or occupied, I downloaded bank and credit card statements, quietly scanning for any unusual expenses. I discovered a $350 charge at a Grand Vista hotel on the night of the supposed work event, likely the room he booked. I added that to my evidence pile. Backed up family financial records onto a flash drive I kept hidden. Noted that Olivia's attention toward Lily had waned in recent weeks. Twice in the last month, she'd forgotten to sign Lily's school forms or attend her parent-teacher meeting, things she normally never missed. Perhaps due to being distracted by him? I jotted these down in my journal. And importantly, I began planning the confrontation. For the confrontation, I knew I wanted our neighbor Sam there, since his account was a key part of exposing her lie. I decided I also wanted others who would matter. Specifically, Olivia's parents. They adored me as a son-in-law and absolutely doted on Lily. If they witnessed Olivia's betrayal unveiled, they would almost certainly be in my corner and might talk sense into her or at least provide moral pressure. And part of me also felt that she owed them the truth too. They believed their daughter to be an honest, loving wife. They deserved to see what I saw. Choosing the setting was next. I concluded that a family dinner at our home would be ideal. It was innocuous enough to not raise suspicion. We occasionally hosted dinners. I would frame it as wanting to have the neighbors over and to thank Sam for helping Olivia that night, a detail I'd casually drop to her so she wouldn't find it odd. I'd also invite her parents under the pretense of a normal, friendly get-together. Maybe even one of my close friends who knew both of us, to act as another witness and support for me if needed. With that decided, I picked a date, the upcoming Saturday evening. That gave me 5 days to finalize everything. The timing felt right. It was a weekend, so no one would be rushing off, and it was soon enough that I wouldn't have to endure pretending everything was fine for much longer. Throughout that week, living with Olivia was an exercise in restraint worthy of an Oscar. Each morning, I'd wake up next to her and have to quell the urge to recoil, remembering how she had spent the night of her work event in another man's arms. Each evening, we'd chat superficially about our days while my brain screamed with knowledge I couldn't reveal. Sometimes I caught her studying me, likely to gauge if I was still in the dark. I made sure to act affectionate, just enough to seem normal, but not so much as to initiate anything intimate. I couldn't bear that now. I feigned a mild cold for a couple of days to have an excuse for sleeping early or keeping a bit of distance. If she suspected anything, she didn't show it. She seemed content to let me have my space, perhaps relieved I wasn't pressing her for intimacy or details about her work event. The hardest part was keeping a calm smile whenever Lily was around, ensuring she felt no tension between mommy and daddy. We still did our usual family routines, dinner together, helping Lily with homework, a movie night with all three of us on the couch. Those moments were bittersweet. I cherished them knowing they were among the last we'd have as an intact family, and it fueled my resolve. Olivia had already shattered our bonds in secret. I was just waiting to shatter the illusion publicly. Finally, I set the trap. On Wednesday evening, as we cleaned up after dinner, I casually mentioned, "I ran into Sam yesterday. You remember the neighbor who drove you home last week? I invited him to join us for dinner this Saturday." I purposefully kept my tone light. Figured we owe him a nice meal as thanks, and it'd be fun to have a little get-together. As I expected, Olivia stiffened almost imperceptibly at the mention of Sam. She was standing at the sink, her hands paused in the soapy water. "Oh, you did?" she said. Her voice was steady, but I caught the faint note of wariness. "Yeah," I went on, pretending not to notice her reaction. "I also was thinking of asking your parents to come by. We haven't had them over for dinner in a while, and they love a good pot roast." I gave a small chuckle as if this was all no big deal. Olivia turned off the faucet and wiped her hands, finally looking at me. There was definitely caution in her eyes now. "That's nice. I mean, I'm sure they'd love that." She forced a smile. "I just hope I can pull off a pot roast on Saturday." "I can help," I said, waving a hand. "Or we can make something simple. It'll be casual. I already told Sam you'd make your famous apple pie for dessert, though." I lied about the last part just to give her a small task and keep her occupied. Baking was something she enjoyed and might distract her from any anxiety. She let out a breathy laugh. "Of course you did. All right, sounds fun." I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. She likely wondered if Sam had said anything to me. But since I acted oblivious, even cheerfully mentioning him, she might have thought he hadn't spilled any beans. Perhaps she thought he simply didn't realize her story to me was different. Or maybe she believed her cover was still intact. Either way, she agreed to the plan, albeit a little nervously. By Friday, all the pieces were in place. Marilyn had sent over finalized divorce papers, ready for me to sign and serve at my discretion. Asset documents were copied and secure. My evidence, the screenshots, the hotel charge, Sam's anticipated testimony, was compiled, with copies at my lawyer's office and hidden at home. Olivia's parents had confirmed they'd come to dinner, excited to spend Saturday evening with us. Sam and I had spoken too. I told him it was just a friendly dinner to show our appreciation, nothing formal. I hadn't informed him of my intentions. I wanted his reactions genuine when the moment came. I also invited my closest friend, David, who'd known us both for years. I told Olivia it was just to round out the evening and because David had been wanting to catch up. In truth, I wanted David there as moral support for me and as another witness to whatever was about to go down. He was one of the only people I trusted with knowing my plan ahead of time. I had confided in him on Thursday about what I discovered. David was appropriately enraged on my behalf and agreed to be there, both as a friend and in case things got out of hand and I needed backup. With everything set, All I had to do was get through one more day and then spring the trap. I could hardly concentrate at work on Friday. My mind kept rehearsing the confrontation, anticipating every possible reaction from Olivia. Would she deny it flat out despite the evidence? Would she break down and confess the moment she realized she was caught? No matter what, I resolved to remain composed, to not let her tears or shouting, whichever it might be, derail my purpose. By Friday night, I was a bundle of nervous energy masked under a veneer of calm. Olivia commented that I seemed antsy. I just shrugged and said I was eager for the weekend. In truth, I was counting the hours. We went to bed in silence. I didn't reach out to hold her, nor she to me. We were like two strangers sharing a bed, separated by a gulf of secrets. In the darkness, I stared at the faint outline of the marker I had placed in my pocket of the jacket hanging on the chair, a thick black permanent marker that would play a special role in tomorrow's drama. The symbolism of writing on the wall wasn't lost on me. By this time tomorrow, the truth would be laid bare in black and white for all to see. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. This was it. I had prepared as much as one could. Come tomorrow, the comfortable lie we'd been living would be obliterated. And from the rubble, I intended to build a new life for Lily and me, free of deceit. The dinner of revelation. The Saturday sun crawled across the sky at a painfully slow pace. By late afternoon, our house was filled with the savory aroma of pot roast and the cinnamon sweetness of Olivia's apple pie. In the kitchen, I moved with practiced ease, helping Olivia set the dining table as if this were any normal family gathering. On the surface, we might have appeared the picture of a happy couple hosting a dinner party. Inside, my nerves crackled with anticipation and cold fury. Every clink of plates or casual brush of her hand as we passed in the kitchen sent a jolt through me, a reminder of what was to come. Olivia was unusually quiet, and I could tell she was anxious. Perhaps the impending presence of Sam had her on edge. A couple of times she opened her mouth as if to say something, but then thought better of it. I, in contrast, made light conversation to maintain the facade, discussing Lily's latest school project, the weather, anything mundane to keep things normal. By 6 p.m., our guests began to arrive. First were Olivia's parents, Michael and Carol. They came in beaming, arms laden with a bottle of wine and a bouquet of flowers. "It smells delicious in here," Carol exclaimed as she hugged me. "Thank you for having us over, you two. It's been too long." "Our pleasure," I replied warmly, giving Michael a firm handshake and pat on the shoulder. Olivia greeted them with a tight smile and quickly busied herself pouring drinks. I noticed she avoided prolonged eye contact with either of her parents. Next came my friend David. I welcomed him with a brotherly hug. "Good to see you, man," he said, looking me in the eye with a subtle nod. A silent check-in on my resolve. I nodded back imperceptibly. We had this under control. Finally, Sam arrived a few minutes past 6, apologizing jovially for being on taxi driver time. "No worries, come on in," I said, ushering him inside. Sam handed Olivia a small potted plant as a host gift. "Thanks again for inviting me. It's nice to have a night off with good company," he said cheerfully. If only he knew. Olivia's voice wavered just a touch as she thanked him for coming. I could see her suppressing her nerves, trying to act like everything was fine. She was dressed in a casual blue dress, hair neatly done, outwardly the gracious hostess, but her eyes were darting more than usual. She was stealing glances at me, at Sam, as if trying to read what might happen. I gave her a reassuring smile whenever our eyes met, pretending obliviousness, which seemed to both comfort and confuse her. We all gathered around the dinner table, Lily included, sitting between her grandparents excitedly. The first part of the evening went surprisingly smoothly. I played the role of attentive husband and host. We chatted about harmless topics. Michael regaled us with a story of his recent fishing trip. Carol doted on Lily, who was busy showing her grandmother a drawing she'd made. David engaged Sam in a discussion about the city's sports teams. And Olivia mostly listened quietly and forced laughter at the appropriate moments. I could sense her tension in the tightness of her smile, and the way she refilled her wine glass a little too quickly. Her eyes never strayed far from Sam, as if bracing for him to inadvertently say something about that night. At one point, during a lull in conversation, Sam did mention, "Olivia, I hope you got home all right that other night. You left your event pretty late, huh?" I felt Olivia's foot jerk under the table, likely kicking him accidentally or in panic. I couldn't be sure. She swallowed and gave a shaky chuckle. "Oh, yes. Thanks again for the ride, Sam," she said softly. "I really appreciated it." I watched her carefully. A pink flush had crept up her neck. To anyone else, she might have just appeared bashful about the attention. But I knew it was fear. I decided to ease her mind for the moment, to keep her unsuspecting. "We were so lucky you happened by, Sam," I interjected lightly. "Otherwise, she might have been stranded downtown half the night." "Happy to help," Sam replied with a grin. "Right place, right time." He seemed oblivious to the minefield underfoot, and I wanted him to stay oblivious until the grand reveal. Dinner continued, and soon plates were cleared. The pot roast had been a hit, and Olivia's mother went on about how tender it was. "Dessert time?" I asked, catching Olivia's gaze. "Ready for your famous pie?" "Sure," she said quietly and stood to fetch it. I could tell her nerves were getting worse as the evening progressed. A thin sheen of sweat was visible at her temple. As she walked into the kitchen, I excused myself to help her cut and serve the pie, and to prepare for what I had to do next. In the kitchen, as she pulled the pie from the counter, I gently touched her arm. "Everything okay?" I asked softly, playing concerned husband. "You seem a little tense." She blinked, startled, then forced a laugh. "Oh, I'm fine. Just a bit tired, I guess. It's been a long day cooking and cleaning for tonight." She avoided my eyes, concentrating on slicing the pie. I lowered my voice, ensuring it wouldn't carry to the dining room. "You sure that's all it is? You're not worried about anything else?" For a heartbeat, the slicing knife paused and she finally looked at me. Her eyes were wide, searching my face. "What do you mean?" she asked. I gave a reassuring smile, gently taking the knife from her under the guise of helping. "I mean, you're doing great. Relax," I said, smoothly redirecting. "Let me finish serving, you go entertain." Relief, confusion, and lingering doubt flickered across her face. In the end, she nodded and stepped back into the dining room carrying a tray of plates. I exhaled slowly. That was the last bit of hand-holding I'd do for her. The stage was set. It was time. I retrieved the thick black marker from my jacket pocket and slipped it up my sleeve, my heart pounding. Balancing the pie in one hand and concealing the marker in the other, I returned to the dining room. Lily was chattering happily with her grandparents when I came back. I hated that what I was about to do would shatter this warm scene. But it was a necessary pain. I caught David's eye and gave him the subtlest nod. He straightened, knowing it was almost showtime. As everyone savored the first bites of the cinnamon-laced apple pie, I stood up from my chair. "This pie is amazing, hun," I said to Olivia. She looked up at me, smiling faintly, likely thinking the worst was over. How wrong she was. "Thank you," she murmured. I cleared my throat. "Actually, there's something I'd like to do. A little presentation, if you will." A few puzzled looks were cast my way. Michael chuckled. "Uh-oh, Ethan's bringing out the work presentations." I forced a chuckle along with the others. Olivia's smile faltered a bit. "What are you up to?" she asked, trying to sound light. But I could hear the note of anxiety. Instead of answering immediately, I walked to the blank stretch of pale gray wall just behind the head of the table, directly in everyone's view. I uncapped the marker with a decisive snap. "Ethan?" Olivia said, a definite tremor in her voice now. I turned to the group, my pulse roaring in my ears, yet my outward demeanor steady. "Forgive me, everyone. I promise I won't ruin the evening for long, but I've been working on a little timeline, and I need to share it." With deliberate strokes, I began to write on the wall. On 11:48 p.m., April 17th. The marker's ink bled stark and black into the wall paint. There were gasps. Carol actually put a hand to her mouth, baffled that I was writing on the wall. Olivia stood up halfway, alarm etched on her face. "What are you doing?" she exclaimed. I ignored her and kept writing beneath the first line, "Le Jardin Bistro, Westfield Ave." "Ethan, stop," Olivia said, her voice high-pitched. She took a step toward me. "Sit down, Olivia," I said coldly, turning to lock eyes with her. It was the first time I'd allowed the ice in my voice to show all night. She froze, stunned by my tone. "Ethan, what is going on?" Michael, my father-in-law, asked, confusion and concern in his voice. All eyes were on me, the room dead silent except for Olivia's ragged breathing. I turned back to the wall and wrote the final line, pressing the marker hard. Taxi fare, 27.80. For a moment, all that could be heard was the squeak of the marker's tip against the wall and the ticking of our dining room clock. I stepped back, marker still in hand, and surveyed my handiwork. 3 simple lines, innocuous to a stranger perhaps, but devastating to my wife. Olivia's mother was the first to break the silence. "What on earth does that mean?" Carol asked, voice quavering. I recapped the marker with a click and faced the table. My gaze went to Lily. Her big brown eyes were round with surprise and a little fear at seeing Daddy write on the wall and speak so sternly. My heart clenched. I softened my expression for her sake. "Sweetie," I said gently, "why don't you take your pie and go watch some cartoons in the living room? I'll come get you in a bit." "But why?" Lily asked, looking at the adults' faces, sensing something serious. Carol quickly rose, always protective of her granddaughter. "Come on, Lily Pad," she coaxed, using her pet name for her. "Let's find you something fun to watch for a few minutes." She shot me a worried glance and I gave her a grateful nod. Once Lily had been ushered out and the murmur of the TV could be heard from the next room, I took a deep breath and finally let the truth erupt. 11:48 p.m., April 17th, I said, pointing to the first line on the wall. "That's the exact time my loving wife was picked up by a taxi last week on Thursday night." I swung my gaze to Olivia, who stood as if rooted to the floor, one hand gripping the back of her chair. She looked like a deer in headlights. "Le Jardin Bistro, Westfield Avenue," I continued, tapping the second line. That's the location where said taxi picked her up. Not at her office, not at any work event, but at a fancy French restaurant on the other side of town." Shock rippled across the room. Sam's face went from perplexed to dawning realization. David sat tensely, arms folded, jaw set. Olivia's father had gone pale. "Olivia, what is he talking about?" Michael asked in a low, disbelieving tone. Olivia's lips parted, but no sound came. She shook her head as if denying reality itself. I didn't let her finish. "Taxi fare, 27.80, I said, voice like steel as I pointed to the last line. "That's the fare that our neighbor Sam charged for the ride straight from Le Jardin to this house." I turned to Sam directly. "Isn't that right, Sam? You drove her straight home. No stops, no other passengers." Sam looked utterly mortified, glancing between us. Yes, that sounds about right," he stammered. "I picked Olivia up around that time and took her home, alone." The poor man's face flushed, realizing the implication of his words. A strangled cry escaped Olivia's throat. "How could you—" She started toward me, fury and panic contorting her features. "How dare you do this? How dare I?" I snapped, feeling my own anger surge after days of keeping it caged. "How dare you, Olivia?" I flung the marker onto the table. It rolled off and clattered to the floor in the hush. "You lied to my face. You lied to all of us. Work event, was it? Dropping off coworkers? No." I jabbed a finger toward the wall, toward the incriminating words. "You were at Le Jardin, whining and dining while I was home with Lily. And I know you didn't spend that night alone after your little dinner." At this, Olivia's eyes went wide as saucers. Tears began pooling in them, her facade crumbling. "Ethan, please," she begged, voice cracking. "Not here. Not in front of—" "Yes, here," I thundered, my fist clenching the back of my own chair. I had promised myself I'd stay calm, but a decade of love and trust burned to ashes in my chest, fueling me. "Everyone in this room deserves to know what you've done. Your parents who believed they raised an honest daughter. Our friend, our neighbor. They deserve the truth, and so do I." "What truth?" Michael asked sharply, rising to his feet. "Olivia, what is he saying?" Olivia pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. The first tears spilled down her cheeks, black mascara beginning to smear. "Daddy, she whispered, but words failed her. I filled the silence mercilessly. "She's been having an affair," I said, spitting out the word like poison. "That night she wasn't at any work event. She was with another man. After dinner at Le Jardin, they got a hotel room." Carol's hand flew to her heart. "Oh my God," she gasped. Michael looked like he'd been punched, staggering slightly as he braced himself on the table. David put a steadying hand on Michael's back. No, that's not true," Olivia suddenly screamed, desperation turning to denial. "He's lying. I just went for drinks after the event. Nothing happened." I laughed. A bitter, hollow laugh. Nothing happened? For God's sake, Olivia. I yanked my phone from my pocket, my hands shaking with wrath as I opened the photo gallery. Do you know what this is? I asked, my voice deathly calm as I held up the screen for her and anyone else to see. On it was a clear screenshot of her text conversation with Mark, the lines visible even from a few feet away. Olivia's eyes went to the phone and she let out a wail, lunging towards me. Stop! Don't! Too late. I read out the damning lines, raising my voice over her sobbing protests. Work event Thursday night, we'll see you after. That's what you texted him. And his reply, can't wait, I'll get us a room. I advanced on her and she stumbled back, nearly knocking over her chair. Shall I read the ones from earlier too? How about last time was incredible? Need you again from Loverboy? Or your response, soon, I promise, working on an excuse. Oh my God, Carol kept muttering, tears in her eyes as she looked at her daughter in horror. Michael's face had contorted into anger and disgust. He looked away from Olivia as if he couldn't bear the sight of her. Olivia was sobbing openly now, shoulders shaking. Ethan, please. I'm sorry, she cried, reaching out toward me. I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to find out like this. To find out, I roared. You never meant for me to find out at all, did you? You would have kept lying and sneaking around. You would have let me believe I was crazy if I ever suspected. I could feel the heat of long-suppressed rage flooding my cheeks. Was it worth it, Olivia? Throwing away our family for that scumbag? It just happened, she moaned through her tears. I didn't know how to stop it. I was going to end it, I swear. I was. I shook my head in disgust. That night was hardly going to be the end, not based on your plans. You were arranging your next rendezvous. My voice dropped, cold and resolved. But it is the end now. I'm done. This marriage is over. The finality of those words hung in the air. Olivia let out a broken cry, covering her face with her hands. Her world was collapsing and there was no one to blame but herself. Sam had been silent the entire time, but now he rose slowly from his chair. He looked stricken. Ethan, I'm sorry, man, he said softly. I didn't realize any of this. I feel terrible. He looked at Olivia, disbelief and disappointment on his face. Jesus, Olivia, he murmured, trailing off. I managed a tight nod at Sam. Oh, you couldn't have known. In fact, I owe you thanks. If not for your mention of that night, I might still be in the dark. Sam shook his head, clearly eager to remove himself from this tragic scene. Maybe I should go, he began. You can stay or go, up to you, I said, regaining a bit of composure and straightening my shirt. We're nearly done here anyway. I turned back to Olivia, who had sunk into her chair, face buried in her hands as she wept uncontrollably. Her mother tentatively stood behind her, hand on her daughter's shaking shoulder, tears in her own eyes. Michael remained standing, staring at the wall, at the incriminating black lettering with an expression of profound disillusionment. I walked around the table to our small sideboard drawer, where I had stashed the final props for tonight's performance. From it, I drew out a thick manila envelope. The sound made Olivia lift her red, blotchy face from her hands. In here, I said quietly, are divorce papers. A collective gasp from her parents, a grim look from David, a new sob from Olivia. I had them prepared yesterday, I continued, my tone now eerily calm. I was in control again, every step executed. Citing irreconcilable differences, I will be filing them first thing Monday. I tossed the envelope onto the table in front of her. It landed with a heavy thud. Ethan, please, she whispered, don't do this. We can talk, we can go to counseling. I barked a short laugh. Counseling? Now you want to talk? You had plenty of chances to talk before you spread your legs for your boss. Enough, Michael snapped at my vulgarity, reflexively protective of his daughter despite everything. He shot me a warning look, but then his face crumpled as he glanced at Olivia. How could you do this, Olive? He said, voice breaking. How could you destroy your family? Olivia reached out toward her father, sobbing, Daddy, I'm so sorry. I messed up. He stepped back from her reach, pain and disappointment etched on his face. I felt a hollow ache in my chest watching the emotional wreckage unfold, but I hardened myself. Some part of me took grim satisfaction in seeing her face the music publicly. This is what she wrought. You can apologize until you're blue in the face, I said, but it changes nothing. I'm done. Lily and I deserve better than this. At the mention of our daughter, Olivia let out a keening wail. Lily, oh God, Lily, what have I done? She started to stand as if to go to the living room. I stepped into her path. I'll handle Lily, I said firmly. You should pack a bag and leave. Her eyes widened in panic. Leave? This is my home too. I have nowhere to… You should have thought of that before, I cut her off icily. Go with your parents or go to him for all I care. But you're not sleeping here tonight. I can't stand to be under the same roof. She looked around desperately. Her mother gently took her arm. Come stay with us tonight, sweetheart, Carol whispered, even as tears streamed down her face. You need to go. Olivia resisted, looking back at me with imploring eyes. Please, Ethan, please, can we talk tomorrow? Just us? I'll do anything, please. She was nearly incoherent, hiccuping through sobs. I met her gaze with a stony one of my own. There's nothing left to talk about except logistics. I softened my tone just a fraction. For Lily's sake, I'll try to keep things civil, but make no mistake, I will be pursuing full custody of our daughter. And given what's happened, I doubt any court would favor you. No, no, please. She shook her head frantically. Don't take Lily from me, please. She clung to Carol now, legs seemingly unable to hold her up. That plea twisted a knife of emotion in me. Despite everything, the thought of separating a child from her mother was heartbreaking. But I steeled myself with memories of those texts, of her deceit. You should have thought of Lily while you were betraying us, I replied, each word measured and cold. Carol and Michael began moving their daughter toward the hallway. She was nearly delirious with grief, muttering apologies and begging forgiveness in turn. It was a pitiful sight, one that might have evoked pity in me if I hadn't been so thoroughly betrayed. Sam quietly let himself out with an awkward, I'm so sorry, take care, clearly eager to flee the devastation. I didn't stop him. David hovered, unsure if he should go or stay. I'll be in touch later, I told him, appreciating his presence but wanting privacy now. He nodded and clasped my shoulder briefly before slipping out the front door with a final glare in Olivia's direction. In the foyer, Michael had grabbed Olivia's coat and purse. She suddenly broke from her parents and rushed back toward me. She fell to her knees on the hardwood floor at my feet, a posture that shocked us all. Clutching at my hands, she sobbed, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I love you, Ethan. I love our family. Please, don't do this. I'll do anything. Please don't take Lily. Her sobs echoed in the hallway. I looked down at the woman who, until a few days ago, I had adored and trusted with my life. Now she was a stranger, a broken stranger, and her tears did not move me like they once might have. I gently pulled my hands away from her grasp. If you loved me or our family, you wouldn't have done this, Olivia, I said quietly. Stand up. Have some dignity. She stayed kneeling a moment longer, face crumpled in agony. Then Carol coaxed her up, wrapping an arm around her shaking shoulders. Without another word, her parents escorted her out the door into the chilly night. I shut the door behind them, the click of the latch sounding the final end of our life together. The silence that followed was immense. The house, once full of voices and warmth, felt like a hollow shell. My knees felt weak. I stumbled back to lean against the wall. The same wall now emblazoned with damning black writing. I realized my entire body was trembling, adrenaline fading and leaving behind exhaustion and heartbreak. From the living room, I heard the low murmur of the TV and suddenly remembered Lily. Taking a deep breath, I wiped my face, surprised to find tears on my own cheeks I hadn't realized were there. Steadying myself, I walked to the living room door. Lily stood just inside it, not watching the cartoons at all. She peered up at me with confused, frightened eyes. Daddy, why was Mommy crying? Why did she leave with Nana? She asked in a small voice. In that moment, seeing my innocent little girl clutching her stuffed bunny, I felt a surge of protectiveness so strong it nearly brought me to my knees. I went to her, scooping her up in my arms. Mommy did something wrong, sweetheart, I said softly, voice thick. She hurt Daddy very much. So she's going to stay at Nana and Papa's for a little while. Lily's face scrunched up, and tears of confusion welled. Are you and Mommy mad at each other? I hugged her close, gently stroking her hair. It's grown-up stuff, Lily. But no matter what, I love you. And Mommy loves you too. That will never change, okay? My throat burned as I spoke. She sniffled, resting her head on my shoulder. Okay, she whispered. How about we get you to bed, my little star? I murmured after a moment. It's late. As I carried her toward the stairs, she looked back at the dining area where the remnants of dinner and that incriminating writing on the wall remained. Daddy, you wrote on the wall, she said with the air of someone pointing out a very odd thing. I managed a tired smile. I did. Don't worry about it, love. I'll clean it up later. Upstairs, I tucked Lily into bed and sat with her until she drifted off, holding my hand tightly. Each time her eyes fluttered open to make sure I was still there, I offered a reassuring smile. I'm here, I whispered again and again, until she finally fell into a peaceful sleep. When I was certain she was settled, I gently slipped my hand free and stood. My body felt like lead. I checked the time, nearly 10 p.m. It had been one of the longest days of my life and certainly the most emotionally draining. I walked back down to the dining room. The scene was like something out of a war zone. Emotional shrapnel everywhere. Half-eaten pie on plates, chairs askew, a fallen napkin here, a smudge of something on the tablecloth. And on the wall, the bold evidence of my wife's betrayal scrawled in black. The sight of it gave me pause. The words were a harsh reminder of what I had just done, what had just happened. In the heat of anger, I hadn't truly processed my own pain. Now as the house sat in silence, it hit me. A decade of love, destroyed. The woman I once envisioned forever with, exposed and gone. A part of me wanted to howl with grief. Instead, I walked to the wall and uncapped the marker again. There was one more thing I needed to do to symbolically close this chapter. Beneath the taxi fare, I pressed the marker and wrote one last line with a steady hand. Truth. Then I capped the pen, set it down on the table, and sat heavily in a chair. I would leave the writing up for a day or two, I decided. Like graffiti at a crime scene, it felt right to let the words linger, to imprint the lesson on my mind. Eventually, I stood and methodically began to clear the table and tidy up, operating on autopilot. There was an uncanny calm in the act of cleaning the debris from the battlefield of our marriage. Plate by plate, piece by piece, I restored order to the physical space while my mind churned on the chaos of the future. One thing was certain. Tonight was the dramatic climax, but the fallout was only beginning. I had won the opening salvo. I had the upper hand with evidence, family support, and legal representation. But there would be days, months perhaps, of painful logistics ahead. Telling more family and friends, legal wrangling, helping Lily understand in time. A heavy road lay ahead. Still, as I looked around the now immaculate dining room, a grim resolve settled over me. We'll be okay, I thought, picturing Lily's sweet face. I'll make sure we're okay. Fallout and consequences. In the days and weeks that followed, the reality of what had happened set in like a cold, unyielding winter. There was no easy part to what came next, but I approached it with the same determination and tactical mindset that had gotten me this far. True to my word, I filed the divorce papers that Monday morning. Olivia was officially served through her attorney within a week. She vacated our home and moved in with her parents, who were supportive of me and furious with her, though heartbroken by the situation. We communicated only through lawyers and terse texts about arrangements for Lily. Gone were any pretenses of affection. Ours was now a relationship of business-like exchanges and loaded silences. The custody battle, if it could even be called that, was surprisingly one-sided. Whether out of genuine remorse or sheer despair, Olivia did not contest my request for primary custody of Lily. Perhaps her own guilt convinced her she didn't deserve to take Lily from me. Perhaps her parents urged her not to put our daughter through a protracted fight. Through her lawyer, she proposed generous visitation, but agreed that Lily would continue living full-time with me in the marital home. When I saw that concession in writing, I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It was the one outcome I cared about most, that Lily's life would remain as stable as possible with me as her rock. On the financial front, I was equally thorough. With Marilyn Cook's guidance, we cataloged every asset, every account, and every expense that could be relevant. During this process, certain truths emerged. For instance, the credit card records showed multiple charges that corresponded with Olivia's trysts, hotel bookings, expensive dinners at discreet restaurants, even a set of jewelry I never received. These revelations were like salt in my wound, but they also strengthened my bargaining position. In the divorce negotiations, Marilyn made it clear we were prepared to litigate on grounds of financial misconduct, meaning we could ask the court to award me a larger share of the assets due to Olivia's misuse of funds on the affair. Olivia, likely eager to minimize public exposure of her sins and prodded by her own attorney to be pragmatic, ultimately offered little resistance. In the final settlement, I kept the house, the deeds signed over fully to me, my retirement accounts untouched, and the majority of our savings. She waived any claim to alimony, again perhaps out of guilt or because she knew any judge would be informed of her affair. Essentially, I seized almost all of our shared assets, not out of greed, but out of a sense of justice and, admittedly, anger. I wanted to leave her as little as possible to show that actions have consequences. Throughout those proceedings, I maintained a facade of calm resolve. Every meeting with lawyers, every mediated session, I faced her with a steely, distant gaze. She looked like a shadow of the woman I'd known, subdued, eyes often downcast, weight visibly lost. At times, she quietly wept during meetings when discussion turned to Lily or the division of things from our life together, deciding who kept which car or how to handle personal items. I remained unmoved. In those moments, I reminded myself of the nights I'd held our crying daughter who missed her mommy, or of the gut punch of reading those texts. I wouldn't soften. No reconciliation, I'd promised, and I stood by that. Meanwhile, I turned my attention to Mark Sandoval, the man who had helped blow apart my world. My revenge against him was swift and calculated. First, I gathered what information I had. I knew his full name, job title, and thanks to a bit of discreet inquiry through a mutual acquaintance, I confirmed that he was indeed married with 2 teenage sons. The injustice of that made my blood boil anew. He wasn't just a predator at work, but a betrayer in his own family. About 2 weeks after my marriage imploded, I mailed a package to Mark's home address anonymously. Inside, I included printed copies of the most damning evidence, the text messages between him and Olivia, with no redaction of his phone number or name, and a short letter I typed that simply said I thought his wife deserved to know the truth about her husband's activities. I never learned the full fallout of that delivery, but through the grapevine at Olivia's company, I heard that Mark's wife filed for divorce shortly thereafter. A part of me felt a grim satisfaction. He ruined my family, so I'd played a part in ruining his. I didn't stop at his home. Using a personal email under a pseudonym, I contacted the HR department at their workplace. I framed it as a concerned, anonymous tip. A high-level director was engaging in an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate, with names and evidence attached. Corporate policies at their firm forbade relationships that could be construed as sexual harassment or conflicts of interest, especially if one party had authority over the other. It didn't matter that it was consensual. The power imbalance and potential liability would make any company see red flags. The company acted quickly. Within a month, Mark was quietly forced to resign. I heard that Olivia, too, chose to quit her job not long after. Walking those halls under the weight of scandal and whispers must have been unbearable. In one fell swoop, they both lost not only their marriages and reputations, but also the jobs that had partly defined them. The takedown of her lover, and by extension, her own career, was complete. Life settled into a new pattern as spring turned to summer. Lily and I lived alone in the house now. In the immediate aftermath, I took a short leave from work to ensure I was fully there for my daughter. I engaged a child therapist for a few sessions to help Lily process the sudden changes. Mommy not living with us, the palpable tension between her parents. I kept the explanations age-appropriate. Mommy and Daddy had a big disagreement. We weren't going to live together anymore, but we both still loved her very much. It wasn't easy, and many nights I held her as she cried, missing her mother. Those were the hardest moments when any impulse to relent nearly broke through, but I stayed strong, reminding myself that a quick fix of getting back together would only paper over cracks that could never truly mend. Lily deserved honesty and stability, not a sham of a marriage held together for her sake. Olivia, to her credit, tried in her own way to salvage her relationship with our daughter. She requested to see Lily often. Initially, I was hesitant. Angry as I was, I never wanted to punish Lily by restricting her mother's presence. So we set up a schedule. Olivia could visit Lily at my house twice a week in the afternoon under my supervision, and have Lily stay with her at her parents' place every other weekend during the daytime. Overnights I didn't allow at first. Perhaps it was spite, or perhaps genuine concern that Olivia was too emotionally unstable to care for Lily overnight then. I compromised later as months passed and she proved responsible in her visits. Those handoffs were terse and painful. Olivia would arrive at the door, eyes down, and I would let her in without a word. I often stayed in another room or busy in the yard while she played with Lily, to give them privacy, but also to avoid any conversation beyond necessary logistics. On a few occasions, she tried to approach me, to talk about us, to apologize again, but I shut it down curtly every time. There was nothing more to discuss. The neighborhood, of course, buzzed with gossip. Our dramatic dinner party was not exactly public, but word leaked in bits and pieces. Sam, bless him, never spoke a word to others about the details, but people noticed Olivia moving out, and eventually small-town chatter filled in the blanks. Strangely, I found that many neighbors, especially the other parents at Lily's school, became openly supportive of me once they knew. It's like I had been inducted into a club nobody wants to belong to, the Betrayed Spouses Club. One of Lily's friends' mothers dropped off a casserole in a note of solidarity. A dad from Scouts invited me out for a beer and confided his own divorce story. These gestures from people I barely knew were unexpected but comforting. It reminded me that I wasn't alone, and that as isolating as humiliation feels, there are others who understand that pain. Legally, everything was finalized by the end of summer. The divorce decree came through granting me full physical custody of Lily, with visitation to Olivia as mutually agreed. I retained final say, a detail my lawyer insisted on. The asset division, heavily weighted in my favor, was approved by the judge, a fairly quick sign-off given it was an uncontested agreement. The judge even noted, with a stern glance at both of us in the courtroom, that he hoped we would prioritize our child's well-being and remain civil. I answered yes, Your Honor, firmly, while Olivia dabbed at her eyes and nodded. Outside the courthouse, on the day our divorce was finalized, Olivia approached me in the parking lot. For a moment, we just stood there, newly decreed ex-husband and ex-wife, the air thick with things unsaid. She looked at me, eyes red but determined. "I know you'll never forgive me," she said quietly. I want you to know I'll regret what I did for the rest of my life. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be a good mother to Lily if you'll let me." I regarded her for a long moment. She looked smaller to me than she ever had, not physically, but in spirit. Once, she'd been the center of my world. Now she was just someone I used to love, standing before me as a cautionary tale. "That's up to you," I finally replied. "Being a good mother, I won't stand in the way of that as long as it truly is good for Lily. But as for forgiveness," I paused, then shook my head. "I can't ever forget what you did. We'll have to live with that." She nodded, tears spilling over. I thought she might try to hug me, but she didn't. We simply parted ways with a sad sort of acceptance. Allowing no moss to grow, I took steps to secure a better future for Lily and me. The house, once filled with both our memories, got a modest makeover. I repainted the dining room wall where I had so dramatically written out my vengeance, covering the black marker with fresh coats of soft cream, erasing the last physical traces of that night. Lily helped me, not knowing the significance, only that Daddy was changing the color to something happier. We turned it into a fun project, and with each stroke of the brush over those dark words, I felt a bit of catharsis. I also changed jobs within my company, requesting a transfer to a slightly different role that offered flexible hours. I wanted to be there for school pickups and soccer practices more than ever now. My employer, aware of my situation, was understanding. Life as a single father was a challenge I met head-on. I learned to braid Lily's hair for school, got better at meal planning, no more just pizza nights all the time, and organized my work schedule around her needs. Through all this, I cannot claim I emerged without scars. Nights were rough at first. I'd put Lily to bed and then lie awake in the silence, replaying the betrayal, sometimes seething, sometimes just profoundly sad. How could the life I built have turned to ashes so quickly? It's a question I might never fully answer. But whenever I felt myself sliding into despair, I'd peek in at Lily sleeping soundly, or she'd stir and call out for me, and I'd remember exactly what I was fighting for: a better life for the two of us. And so, piece by piece, I rebuilt. Epilogue. A new beginning. A year later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, I found myself at the park watching Lily climb the jungle gym, her laughter echoing across the playground. The trees had turned shades of gold and crimson, and the air carried that clean, woodsy smell of fall. I sipped a coffee from a paper cup, hands warm around it, and allowed myself a moment of reflection. So much had changed in a year. Yet, in Lily's carefree giggles and the simple pleasure of a sunny day at the park, I found a reassuring constant. She hung upside down from the monkey bars now, calling out, "Daddy, look at me." I smiled and waved. "I see you, sweetheart. Be careful." Nearby, sitting on a bench, were Michael and Carol, or Nana and Papa, as Lily called them. Remarkably, my ex-in-laws and I had grown closer in the aftermath. They were ashamed of their daughter's actions, but even so, they loved her and hoped for her recovery and growth. More importantly to me, they loved Lily deeply and had been a pillar of support for us. Early on, Michael had pulled me aside and said with a voice full of regret, "Son, I'm sorry for what she put you through. You'll always be family to us." I realized I wasn't just divorcing a wife, I was keeping an extended family. And they, in turn, treated me like a son more than ever. Olivia herself was not present today. She still saw Lily regularly. We had settled into a workable routine that Lily could count on. Over the past year, Olivia had been on her best behavior regarding parenting. She never missed a scheduled visit, never acted out of turn. In those moments when she was with our daughter, she was attentive and loving. I kept my distance during pickups and drop-offs, but I was civil. We shared the occasional polite text about school events or doctor appointments. The wounds between us were no longer raw rage, but they hadn't healed into friendship. I doubted they ever would. Still, we had found a functional truce in the name of co-parenting. From what I knew, Olivia was slowly rebuilding her life. She had started a new job at a small marketing firm outside the city. She was still living with her parents, saving up to eventually move to her own place. We rarely spoke beyond child-related matters, but when we did, she remained cordial, almost overly respectful, as if anything beyond polite distance might reopen old scars. Perhaps it would. I didn't mind the formality, it kept things simple. As for Mark Sandoval, he had become a ghost of the past. After his forced resignation and divorce, he moved out of state according to a mutual acquaintance. I neither knew nor cared where he ended up. The last indirect update I heard was that his ex-wife had won a hefty settlement and primary custody of their children, ironically mirroring my own victory. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. In a way, I had delivered karma to his doorstep, and I was content to leave it at that. I took another sip of coffee, letting its warmth ground me. If you had told me a year ago that I would feel at peace, I wouldn't have believed it. But against all odds, I was pretty close to that now. The anger that once kept me up at night had receded. It flickered to life only rarely, like when I stumbled upon an old photo of Olivia and me in happier times while cleaning, or when I attended a parent-teacher conference alone and had to explain our family situation. Those moments still stung, but they were fleeting. More frequently, I felt hopeful. Healing had come in unexpected ways. It came in the form of Lily's nightly bedtime routine, her whispered, "I love you, Daddy," the perfect salve to any remaining pain. It came through the encouragement of friends, old and new, who pulled me in to pick up basketball games or Sunday barbecues, reminding me life goes on and joy can be found again. It even came through personal achievements, like the day I fixed the leaky bathroom sink all by myself, something I might have once asked Mark, who was handy with tools, to help with. I remember tightening the final washer, watching the drip cease, and feeling an empowering surge of independence. Little by little, I reclaimed my confidence. Trust. That was slower. I won't pretend I'm ready to date or let someone into my heart just yet. The very idea still feels foreign and a bit frightening. I've had casual conversations with single parents in our community, polite smiles exchanged, but I keep a guarded distance. Maybe someday, I tell myself. There's no rush. For now, my world is enough. It's Lily and me, her grandparents, my circle of friends, and the steady rhythm of an honest life we've built out of the rubble. "Daddy, can we get ice cream on the way home?" Lily's voice interrupted my thoughts as she bounded over, cheeks flushed from play, a few strands of her hair escaping the ponytail I'd tied that morning. I reached out and gently tucked the loose strands behind her ear. "Ice cream, huh? Didn't you just have a juice box?" I teased. She gave me a toothy grin, so disarming that I laughed. "All right, ice cream it is. But only if Nana and Papa want some too." I glanced over at her grandparents. Carol chuckled and called out, Oh, we're always up for ice cream. Michael gave a thumbs up. Lily squealed in delight and ran back to grab her things from the playground. I stood and stretched, catching Carol's eye. She offered me a warm smile, a smile tinged with sadness and gratitude, and I understood its meaning. We had all been through a storm, but here we were, weathered and standing. I took one last look around the park as Lily came charging back, dragging her little backpack and chattering excitedly about which flavor she'd get. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow on everything, the swings casting long shadows, the leaves shimmering. I felt the corners of my mouth lift in a genuine smile. This was a new beginning. Not the one I had once envisioned. There was no white picket fence picture of a perfect family with a happily ever after for Olivia and me. But in many ways, this was something more real, more hard-won. It was a life where truth prevailed, where my daughter would grow up in a home without lies, and where I could look at myself in the mirror each day knowing I hadn't been a victim, but a man who stood up for himself and for what was right. As we all walked toward the parking lot, Lily skipping ahead with her grandparents and me trailing just behind, I breathed in the cool fall air and felt that weight that once crushed me fade further into the distance. The past was the past. Justice had been served, and the players in that dark chapter had met their fate. What remained was this, a father and his child, moving forward with love and integrity. We're going to be okay, I thought to myself, watching Lily hold Carol's hand and pull her eagerly toward our favorite ice cream shop across the street. And for the first time in a long time, I truly believed it. With a final glance at the setting sun, I jogged lightly to catch up with my daughter, our future beckoning, bright and unwritten just ahead.